Hello. Um, can y'all hear me? Just checking. Um, Good evening for me. I only see Kitty and Cleo in the chat, so good evening to them too, because it's also evening for them. So, how's everyone doing? I'm gonna assume you can hear me, question mark. I haven't been in a reading mood the past 2 days, but I do want to get some reading in, so I thought maybe sprints would help me. I'm currently reading 2 books, and they're of course not within. This one is within reach, but barely. Oh, hey! Okay, people are joining. I'm reading Take a Hint, Danny Brown. I'm this far in. So I would like to finish this tonight. I'm also reading something else, but I need to get that. Wait a second. I'm awfully prepared again. So you know how like an e-reader, like when you're not actually reading, when it's turned off, it like shows the cover of the thing that you're reading. Yeah, if you've been watching my channel, you may have noticed that mine does weird things with that. Like sometimes it doesn't show anything, or like it is weirdly zoomed in, or it shows like the first page after the cover instead of the cover. This time it did this. Why? But it's Whispers of Stone by Aliga. You can see that by Aliga Pescatore, which is a sequel to Where Shadows Lie, which I read last year. I'm not super far into this, but I'm noticing that it's been a while since I read the first book. So, yeah. Murder in the Family. Is that the one you showed in the Discord? And 6 pages left. Wow, that is... The fact that you stopped reading at that point is impressive to me. But yeah, not fun if you can predict the murder from the get-go. But at least you're liking it. So, or a sleepy face, that is possible too. My e-reader should show a cover, but it doesn't. I have a Ralph, but I can't see. Like the camera, I don't think it's working. So maybe we'll just get your voice.
Can you hear me, Kathy?
Oh, that's so sweet. You could have also just finished it and joined after that. I wouldn't have minded, but thank you. I don't know enough if your microphone works.
Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you now.
That's
But
very good.
I still can see you.
I'm trying to find out what's going on there. Technically, it should work, but if not, it's probably because everything is slow out here.
Okay.
Okay. Let me see. Maybe I can switch on the camera. Apparently, everyone can hear and see me. I doubt that.
I can hear you.
Switch on off the camera and see if that helps.
Hello, Julie. Is that right? The Way of Kings. Nice. I haven't read any Cosmere yet. I get a bit overwhelmed with the amount of stuff in that. in that world, and then I don't know where to start because like no one gives you a definitive answer, and they like just start with whatever sounds interesting, and then I'm like, I'm gonna start there, and like, oh no, you have to read that before that, and I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, I would never. I mean, I have to read a lot of like Sanderson later this year, so I'll get there eventually.
I also just like, this is the thing, I don't like these interconnected worlds because if I want to start a series, I want to be able to just commit to that one series and not like have to read a million other things to be able to read the full series. Because then if you have like Stormlight, which from what I've heard, like the first book you're fine to read if you haven't read it, but then like by the time you get to like book 4, like you have to have read all these other things. I'm like, I just want to read this one series. Why can't I just read this one thing?
But I think you can. I think it's just that Sanderson's fans are very, or like Cosmere fans are very insistent. But I think you can just like read whatever, and as long as you stick within like one series, you can just go and read one Mistborn trilogy, I guess.
Yeah. But then there's some series that I've heard, like books that are like, people are like, I don't know if you would enjoy it if you don't, that they like it because of the connections, and like they're not sure if it's like a good book without that. And so like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's just, I think, depends on like what you like about a series, right? If you like doing like making connections and solving every individual riddle in the entire setting, then yeah, sure, you need to read everything. But if you're just there for the plot or the characters, then who cares?
And I think Cleo, like, yes, there were less connected in the beginning, but I also just think because there were less of them, you could like read them as they came out. So I think like there's already so many now. It just keeps releasing like one after the other every week.
Yeah.
So like it's just too much, and like I can't. I'm like, I'm already doing Discworld, and like that is already a lot. So like,
Well, there you definitely don't have to read everything if you don't want to.
yeah, I know, but I want to. So like,
I understand that.
I'm gonna like finish reading Discworld, and then I can start the Cosmere, like one big massive thing at a time.
Okay, I have hopefully switched my camera.
I still can't see you.
No, I think I still have to save the thing.
Okay. The Name of All Things. I've heard really good things about that series, but I've heard that is also a little complex. But editing, that is also, yeah, a thing you need to do, I guess. So have fun. Oh no, there is half is left. Maybe he'll come back. I don't know. Well, watching Kitty's video is also a pretty good use of your time. I can have nothing against that. You know what, Cleo? Just start Play the Prisoner, whatever the 5th book is. Like, it's a one-word title with a G, because that's how all of them are. So whatever that one's called, just do it. I give you permission. Yeah, from the start, like maybe publication order is the way to go. I own what was it called? Like one of the secret projects, Trust of the Emerald Sea. I own that one. And I've heard that it's also a pretty like good entry point, that you don't have to have read a bunch of other stuff. So maybe start with that just because I own it. but then I might go back. Frisbee Fantasy, not hard to follow. Yeah, I've heard that about Sanderson, and he's pretty accessible, so that's always nice. But it's just there's so much of it that is really overwhelming. Frequently contains stuff. Yeah, that is mostly the thing I'm talking about. Like newer stuff is always like, oh, all the connections, and like if you like that, you will enjoy it. Like I don't like that. I won't enjoy this. But I also thought of maybe reading Warbreaker, as you say here. I think I would like that one. I think that would fit my taste pretty well. So. I've been told that I type really loud, so my apologies if it sounds very loud. Okay. I like the standalones and the Storm more than Stormlight. Yeah. I had put The Way of Kings on my 24 books to read in 2024, but I've kind of accepted that. That won't happen this year. So yeah. I guess it's not 23 books that I still would like to read. But maybe I'll try something else. Cosmere that's at least like the spirit of what I was trying to do. A Darkling Plane, a book 4 in Immortal Engines Quartet. I don't think I know this. I'm gonna star that so that I can look that up in one more reading. Yeah, I've heard this. But I haven't really heard anything truly negative about it. Just it's like a bit more complicated. So yay, I guess. Mesper Erna is like apparently a good place to start. The Emperor's Soul. I've heard good things about that one as well. Try to style like I've read Sanderson. I'm currently reading the Skyward series, so like his actual writing, I have tasted before, I should say, but I don't know how he approaches the Cosmere and like a straight up fantasy that he wants fantasy, not like trying to do sci-fi and then like accidentally writing fantasy. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's a short one, so not too much. Okay. I think Ralph is back? Question mark. Are you back? Hello, Melissa. How are you doing? What are you reading? What are you reading or doing during this sprints?
So, can you hear me?
We can hear you, but you need to like put the camera a little higher because like we see your.
This or is it? Oh, it's using the other camera. God, give me a second. It's using this camera.
Yeah.
I think it's using this camera. Yeah, you don't want to see that. Give me a second. I should.
We're just seeing your chair and your legs, so it's.
Yeah, that's because I'm using a laptop, but it's standing on the floor because I don't need that screen. And
yeah.
Let me switch the camera. I mean, I have an external one. That's the point. See, I was always afraid of that. Okay. But at least the camera is now working, so I guess that's one good thing.
End of story. I haven't heard of this. I'm gonna look that up during the sprint as well. I need to get dinner during the sprint because I haven't eaten yet, but I don't know what I want. I can probably do some, like I'll probably just order something, but I don't know what I want. So, yeah. Hard life.
I know that. I just realized that I did actually eat today, which is good for me. Doesn't happen that often. Yeah, that's the trick. It's the wrong camera.
Yeah. Hi, Kirsten.
Let's try this one.
How are you doing? Sorry, I was talking over you.
No worries.
Okay, we see your face now. Yay!
Hooray! Who would have thought that it actually works? This is a 10-year-old laptop that I'm working on right now, and it's a bit of a mess.
AJ Finn, who also wrote The Woman in the Window. I also don't know this. Now I feel inadequate as a booktuber.
I think we all are inadequate because we can't know all the books.
Of course. Pastel with broccoli. I also have a broccoli. He's a little mad at you now for eating his family. But we have Bruno with broccoli here. So he says hi. I'll put him behind me. I don't know if you can stay up. You won't. There's like a little gap between the couch and the wall, so like it's hard to have him like stay. Okay. There he is. So yeah. Cleo thinks your t-shirt is cool, Gov. So, woohoo!
Oh, my t-shirt. Yeah, it's really cool. It's both Batman and Superman in being very sexy. It's from the nerdiest band that I know, and that's saying a lot.
Mystery of Suspense. Yeah, The Woman in the Window sounds kind of like suspense, but I just don't know the book. So, yeah. Old laptops, problems that we have.
It's all a bit of a mess. But what can you do? I will hopefully have a new computer by the end of the week or next week on Monday or so. So I guess things will be getting better. Hopefully.
Yes, Kitty, you have offended the broccoli. Apologize to him now. And then he maybe wants to be friends again. And Kirsten is reading The Vampire Lestat and Death Comes to Marlowe. I'm really interested in the Marlowe Murder Club. I think that sounds like a really fun series. So I might want to give that a try. I'm not a vampire person, so the other one is not really my thing. But the Marlowe Murder Club sounds really fun. So.
Okay. I have a bunch of essays about Umberto Eco's semiotics laying around here that I should probably get to.
Nice.
I did, however, finish today on The Seventh Whale of Salome by Silvia Moreno Garcia, and it's really, really good. I really enjoyed it.
I've only read Mexican Gothic by her, and I thought that was really good. So.
Yeah, this one is sort of like about 1950s era Hollywood trying to make like a, one of those classic Sandal movies about Salome, and they hire a young unknown Mexican actress, and then there's all kinds of Hollywood nastiness going on, including some racism and some misogyny, because of course there is, because it's the 1950s in Hollywood. And the way she combines like the original like Salome story or whatever we actually know about it, which is very little, the way she combines that with and mirrors it with like the action of the filmmaking process, I think was really, really well done. I really enjoyed that.
And yes, Kitty, it is very tasty. I know. We've had a lot of arguments because broccoli is so tasty. It's the superior vegetable. Fight me. Um, the broccoli, it's in we had it from the Leza, but maybe in the Netherlands it's from Little. I don't know. But it was like, yeah, if you like spend so much money, then you could get like a little stamp thingy, and then if you had X many, you could get one of these, and it had different like fruit and vegetables. I have a couple. I have a strawberry. I have a mushroom. I have a blueberry. I have a pear. There was a carrot. I don't have that one. There was also a banana that I don't have. There are a few more. Yeah. On that note, shall we start the first sprint?
That sounds like a good idea. How many minutes do you want to sprint?
Since I want to get dinner during this one, like I want to be able to go out, get it, and eat it.
Right.
So maybe to be safe, maybe we should go a full hour, or is that too long?
That's up to you, I guess.
People in the chat, is an hour too long, or is it okay for you? Because I think I'm just gonna go to the frituur. Being Belgian again.
Well, it does have its advantages, right?
Okay, people are okay with an hour. So let's just do an hour and 5 minutes, because that'll bring us to nicely to like 8 o'clock.
Sounds good to me.
So do I need to do a timer, or are we just fine with saying I'll see you back at 8 o'clock? Maybe I'll do a timer. Maybe that's easier. I don't know. But I don't have one. Again, I'm very prepared for this. Let me look up some sort of timer.
You know what
I'm
would
a
be
pro.
really
You can
cool?
tell.
To have like one of the huge egg timers. You just put it up when all the sand is through, and you just have it as a physical one in front of your camera. That would be really cool.
Okay, let's do is on 63 minutes from now. Oh dear, and now I have to share that. You also see that I'm really used to doing this. Like, you can just how do I do this? Present.
I think you have to go to like screen share or whatever.
Share screen. Then I'll just. Okay, wait. There we are. Share. Okay. I think we can start. I'll see you in an hour and 3 minutes. Oh my god, it worked. Okay, bye.
All right, see ya.
So, how did y'all do? I I had my dinner, and that's about it. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's something, isn't it? So the time was enough for you to get your dinner.
Yes, I had like 2 minutes left. When I
That's
finished, I was
pretty
like,
good.
okay.
That's really good because, like, I went through like 2 essays in that essay collection, and the second essay I was done with like 2 minutes ago, and I'm like, wow, this is perfect. I'm not going to start the next one.
Nice.
Yeah, it was one on lying, and the second one was on drama and how to apply Echo's and Peirce's ideas of semiotics to modern drama versus older drama and stuff like that, which I know basically nothing about.
Kitty edited edited the first 35 minutes that were long. How many is like the total footage? Like, is that almost done or like not even close? I don't know. I mean, I like after dinner, I feel a little bit like it's like you know how like you order a small one and then you get home and you see how many there are and you're like, is it gonna be enough? Like, should I have gone for a medium one? And then you finish like you're done. I'm like, no, small one was definitely the right decision. I'm like, that now and I'm really full.
How long is that vlog if you have already done like 35 minutes, Kitty? I'd just be curious. And also, are you talking about like all 3 live shift books or just the first one?
Um, 3
I
books that were
assume the
spaced
first one
under an
was,
hour.
yeah, the second one is Mad Ship, and the third one is Ship of Destiny, I think.
Yeah, I can see that being a long. They're long books too, so like, I guess there's
That
a
is
lot to talk
true.
about. I haven't read them, so I don't know. Hi, Ron. I assume you can't stay if based on your comment, but hello. Um,
Hey,
so how
Ron.
did everyone else do?
You know, have you ever noticed that like Goodreads is really bad if you're reading academic books? Because if you add your progress and it's like, this book has like 488 pages, and I'm like, yeah, but the last 90 of those are just, endnotes and bibliography and stuff. And I'm like, I'm not going to read those page to page.
But then the ending is going to go so fast.
That is
It's like,
true. That is
surprise, I
true.
already finished. Well, it said I only read 80%.
Yeah, that is true. Now this one is really like, as I said, like 488 pages, but I think it's like 400 something is when it stops. It's really cool. It has like essays by Umberto Eco, and then it has essays about Umberto Eco's philosophy stuff, and then it has like one section with a couple of essays on Name of the Rose, and then a couple of essays on Foucault's Pendulum, and a third one on, is it called The Island of the Day Before? I think that's like the English title for it. Yeah, the third novel. Unfortunately, not for the other books because this one was published in 1997, and that's when there were only 3 Umberto Eco novels.
Nice, Kitty. I hope you enjoyed your dinner that we're not going to specify. I'm going to close the window real quickly.
Green steak. I see what you're doing there.
Like about like half an hour ago or something, there was like some people passing in the street that had like really loud music.
Okay.
And I mean, like I said it before, and I'm gonna say it again. If you're gonna put your music so loud that like half the city can hear it, the least you could do is play good music. I mean,
But how do you communicate your specific like wishes for music to the people walking past you on the street?
I don't. I just hope they go away. Well, hello
Oh.
there. Finished Shadow of the Torturer. How was it? That's one that kind of intimidates me. I want to read it at some point, but yeah, I'm
It's
scared.
really good. I personally really love it. It's a
I heard there's some Sapir-Whorf hypothesis stuff in there, and I don't know if that makes me want to read it more or like run away as fast as I can.
wait, what did you hear? I get confused for a second.
That there's some Sapir-Whorf theory in it, like as a theme.
Could be. There's a lot of stuff in there that you can apply or ignore. That's like the beauty of the books. I mean, the main thing is that it's a first-person narrative. It's an unreliable narrator that tells you constantly that he can remember everything because he has perfect memory, and then contradicts himself a lot of times. There are very specific, like Catholic theology allusions in there. There are a lot of other references. It's a very, very weird and unique kind of story. But it's not as difficult as people make it out to be. You can just read it and have fun with, a very weird proto-incel kind of narrator who knows everything there is to know about women, bumbling through life and totally missing every individual point.
Yeah, I think it could be a good discussion.
Hey, Dan, there is that really cool duel in there. That is action-packed, I would say. Also, it's like one of the weirdest ideas for a duel that I've ever encountered. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but everyone, but that duel is just really cool. Although there will be more action in the upcoming books, Dan, I can promise you that there will be more action.
A duel with the
But it's,
shrubbery? You're making this book sound really weird right now, and I don't know if that makes me
Okay.
want to read it or like
I mean,
run in the other direction.
Shrubbery is definitely giving it a bad rap there. I mean, there's really interesting stuff in there, but it is weird and unique. I mean, I don't know how to describe this. I really enjoyed it. It's definitely a book that you should read more than once or reread, like the entire first. Like, there's 4 books, right? The Shadow of the Torturer, the Claw of the Conciliator, the Sword of the Lictor, and the Citadel of the Autarch. And those 4 make up the Book of the New Sun. Then there's like a 5th book that sort of is an addendum. But at the end of book 4, Severian, that being the main character, tells you that you should read the book again if you haven't understood it, just as he would write it again. And he's right. You missed a lot of stuff the first time around. I can promise that. But it's yeah, I don't know. I highly recommend it. I mean, the other part is they are relatively short books. Like, I don't know, 350 pages per volume, so it's not like Malazan where you start and have like an 800 page book to start with.
Malazan is one of the other series that like at some point. Kitty, what I will be reading, I'm not entirely sure because I'm in the middle of 2 books. I kind of want to read Take a Hint, Danny Brown, and like maybe finish it tonight. That's an option, but I'm also really liking Whispers of Stone. I'm not far into it, and just like my brain tells me that maybe I should read this one because I have quite a bit of fantasy on my TBR for the month. So like maybe I should do the fantasy now that I'm like like if I want to read both, I can maybe save the romance for if I'm in a romance mood specifically, because I will have other fantasy for if I'm in a fantasy mood specifically. So maybe I should continue this one.
How many books do you read in parallel?
Usually I have one in Dutch and one in English.
Oh, okay.
Going.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? Allows you to switch your brain between languages. I guess it makes it easier to keep things separate.
Yeah. I'm also kind of reading Anathem in the background, but I'm doing that one very slowly. So, like,
how far
that's
are
fine.
you with Anathem now?
I'm a few pages into part 5.
When's
So
part
like
5?
about a fifth, I think, like 20% ish of the way through, I think.
So they have left the convent thing, or
No, not yet.
okay, so it's
But I
all
knew they
still
would.
in.
I'm like waiting. I'm like constantly waiting for like, okay, this is gonna be where they leave, right? And like, oh no, they haven't. They're not leaving. This is gonna be where they leave, right? Like, no, not yet. Okay.
No, not yet. Okay, because I it's been like years since I read it, and I know roughly the basic plot is still in my brain, but it's like there's a lot going on in that book because it's a long book.
Yeah, I'm really loving it though, but it's not a quick read. Like, it's kind of dense sometimes, and like, I mean,
Yeah.
you could just fly through it, but I like wanna like savor it,
Yeah, that makes sense. And at least like the first part, it also like flows really slowly. Like it's dense, but there's like there's it proceeds at a stately pace, as more erudite people than me would say. It doesn't rush.
And Melissa reached the end of the story. Did not guess the ending, in a good way or in a bad way, because like it can be like a fun surprise, or it can be coming completely out of left field, and I don't like that either. So like, is it a I didn't guess it, but it makes sense, or like this came out of nowhere type of situation? I hope the first one. Relatively short, but extremely confusing and dense. Definitely take your time, feel like a dream. Yeah, like I feel like I'm reading Anathem now, which is extremely long, and dense. So like after that, like short and dense, I can do. So maybe Shadow of the Torturer is going to be soon. I don't know. We'll see.
I can definitely see you enjoying it because there's a lot to sort of dig in on, like a philosophical and all kinds of historical allusions kind of level. So like I can see you enjoying it.
Mm-hmm. But like,
if
there's
you can
like
get over the fact that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's more like if you can get over the fact that the narrator is really annoying at times. I mean, that I know that's pushed some people off the book because they are like, I can't stand Severian. He's so annoying.
The more philosophical and like references and stuff, I try to sort of space out those reads. Like, I don't want to do them back to back.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I don't have the brain power to do that, and B, I also like don't want to, like, I want to have a bit of time to like let the previous one sink in before I start a new one. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Melissa reads 3 books at a time: paper, Kindle, and audio. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I do like usually one fiction, one non-fiction at the same time. I think that's the way I split it up.
Yeah, that's also a good way to do it.
I just can't handle 2 fiction books at the same time, and my brain's not able to do that. Unless it's, one is like a reread that I've read like 10 times or whatever, like Discworld.
I try to like just make them really different. Like, one is a high fantasy that has like some politics and whatever, and like the other one is a contemporary rom-com.
Yeah.
So like they're very different vibes. Which is also why I read multiple things at a time, because sometimes I'm just not in the mood for one, but I do. So like, and that also helps with them not, like me not confusing them or something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I just can't handle like having unfinished books lying around. I can't DNF either, so that's sort of like why I'm like, no, I'm going to finish this, and then I'm going to the next one, and to the next one, and to the next one. I can sort of justify reading like a nonfiction book and a fiction book at the same time, because those are, I read those for different reasons, and that I can justify. But like two fiction books at the same time, that just doesn't work.
Yeah, this is true. Like you don't get TV shows mixed up, so reading the same. Like that is how I sort of tell it to my dad. Because like there was recently something like sitting with Anathem, which is like this really big book that he saw that I was like still fairly close to the beginning, and like the next day so I was sitting there with a different book, and like weren't you reading like that massive like brick? I'm like, yeah, I'm still reading that. I'm just also reading this thing. And then I explained it like you don't get TV shows mixed up, so like you can read multiple books at the same time as well. Or like series as well. If you like you're not a series binger and you have quite a few ongoing series, like most people don't make a big problem out of that. So like,
but I also binge series. I don't like to switch between series either.
Fair, but like that is like kind of like almost a default on BookTube is like you still never finish them.
Yeah.
Or like at least I see a lot of people who are like that. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's especially with ongoing series, it's a bit difficult to do that. It's like maybe it's because I only read old books where the series is finished, and I can just like go through them in like one big go. But yeah, not necessarily works with the ongoing series, which is why I'm not rereading The Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah, like if you don't want to read multiple books at the same time, like that's fine. Like my Wi-Fi is doing really it's being kind of annoying again. So sorry if there's problems with the stream. I thought that the student resident Wi-Fi gods would be with me today because there's not a lot of people here in the building, so not a lot of people using the Wi-Fi, but apparently it's still crappy if there's no one else around. So yay. I'll try moving it. Let's see if okay. It seems to be better here. So you're sitting on my legs right now.
See, that's something I wish I could do, Dan. I really can't DNF books. It's just like deep-seated like reflex takes over. I even finished Sword of Truth. I mean, the first one, Wizard's First Rule. I even finished that one because I can't not do that.
Why not? Just
I don't know. It's like if I have like an unfinished book, even if I decide that I really don't like it that much, it just keeps haunting me. It comes up in the weirdest places in my brain. It's like, oh God, I still have to finish this. And I don't know why.
yeah. I like I have a spreadsheet in a reading journal, and in both of them I mark things when I finish them, but also like when I DNF them. But there are like some books that I'm like, this is just not the time, and I'll come back to them later, and like I don't mark those off yet, and just those continue to haunt me. But like the second I mark them off, I'm like, okay, that's done. On to the next.
Yeah, I think like what helps me is also that like I'm a very analytical reader, so even books where I'm like not into the plot or whatever, I can always find something that I'm like, well, at least I've learned this specific thing now through reading this book. And I'm like, I can find stuff to take out of books even when I don't like them. And I'm like, oh well, I guess I've learned something.
Yeah. I'm just like, yeah, but I can also learn stuff from this book that I do enjoy. So like,
Yeah, I think the other part is that
one doesn't outweigh the other, in my opinion.
I've gotten really good at picking books that I am enjoying. Like I think like the Sword of Truth one was like the last one where I'm like really like this absolutely sucks, but I bought it, so I'm gonna read it. Well, I mean, and of course Wheel of Time, but there I could get something out of it.
I think like mostly like if a book like truly sucks, then I kind of find it fun to hate read about it, like hate read it and like rant about it, and kind of laugh at it. So like I get enjoyment from that. But if it's just
Hmm.
like this book exists, I guess, then like yeah, I'm just no, thank you.
Yeah, like the boring middle stuff. I'm like, oh, this is
Yeah, or
okay,
like
I guess.
the books that are bad, not because they have something bad in it, but because they have nothing good in it. Like
Yeah,
those.
yeah,
Yeah, those will be like I'll DNF those more easily than like the truly truly bad ones.
yeah, yeah. So like I've been very lucky with my book picks recently. I'm like, well, these are all at least good.
I've been DNFing a lot lately. Like July has been just one after the other.
Wow.
And I don't know if it's me or if it's just the books because like for each of them I can like really pinpoint a reason of like this. But like I don't know if I was just feeling kind of slumpy and was therefore like not very patient with them, or if it's just like
Mm,
just a bad streak of picking up books that just were not it.
yeah, I got lucky in July because there were like 4 new releases in July, which is like a lot for me because I rarely read like new releases. And like July had like 4 of them, and 3 out of them were really good, and the fourth one was at least interesting in how it failed. So I got really lucky there.
Shall we do another sprint?
Sounds like a plan. I have an essay on conspiratorial thought
I'm gonna go this one a little bit
about America.
shorter if it's okay, like more like 45 minutes, if
Fine by
that's
me.
okay for everyone. Um, so happy sprinting, and I'll see you in pretty 5. So, how did everyone do? I got to 9% of Whispers of Stone, and I'm really liking it. It has been a really long time. I think it's like literally been a year since I've read book one, and I'm kind of feeling it, but things are coming back, so that's good.
That's truly good. I read almost 2 essays, but the second one is really long, so I'm like 5 pages away from getting to the third part of the essay collection, which is On the Name of the Rose. But I'm still learning about, or in this case, it's more like a rehash of stuff I've already learned about interpretation and over-interpretation and the different roles of the reader, which is a really interesting part of Echo's philosophy that might actually be worth like its own video at some point, because I think it's the kind of literary theory, or not even literary theory, but aesthetics that a lot of like people who read a lot of books can sort of profit from. So maybe I'll do that at some point in the future.
Okay, where were we with comments? Let's see. Dan DNF'd Lolita and the Trial of Empire this year. Is Trial of Empire, is it the second or the third book in that series? I've really been interested in reading that series. But
I've never heard of the Trout Empire.
I can imagine that Lolita is quite disturbing.
Trials of Empire, I think that's the second one.
Is the second
Yeah,
one?
but that's like a different DNF, right? Like if you DNF because it's just like too much to handle in the same way as, for example, Lolita or stuff that can trigger you. That's, I think, different from DNFing a book because it's just boring.
Yeah. Yeah, but I can imagine that it's quite a disturbing read.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I'm not really interested in reading Lolita. I have read My Dark Vanessa, and I like that, but that one was also quite hard to read. But pretty good, I think. So.
Yeah, I have not read either one. I think they do very specific things differently, and I think My Dark Vanessa is probably easier to read in that it is more direct in what it is saying, because it portrays that whole abuse and grooming or whatever you want to call it, but it's straight about it. Whereas when you read Lolita, it's all from the perspective of the predator. So you, as a reader, have to make that jump, go like, well, yeah, this is all bad, and I have to distrust that the narrator a lot, which I think can be difficult if you're not aware of it in advance, that this is very much sort of an attempt of getting inside the head of like a terrible person.
Yeah. I do like about My Dark Vanessa, though, because you have two timelines. In the timeline of when Vanessa was a teenager, she really thought of it as romantic too, and it's sort of portrayed that way in that timeline. But then, like, when she's an adult looking back, she's sort of seeing how that. So I really liked that. Yeah, they're definitely different books, but I mean, like, similar topic that they're trying to discuss.
Yeah, I think, as I said, like, I think they complement each other because they're doing very specific things differently. And especially what I found interesting with the whole My Dark Vanessa thing is like how much the author got pressured into admitting whether it was based on like her own experience or not, which says a lot of like not so good things about the way we interact with authors these days, or interact with people online in general. In the same way as like it's called Love, Simon, where the author was pushed into outing themselves as bisexual, because obviously you can't write about queer topics if you're just straight. And yeah, I think we need to learn how to deal with authors in a way that is more healthy.
Yeah. And walking with books about, why am I blinking on your name right now? But diving into a book, what book are you reading? Yeah, Lolita is of TNF. Couldn't handle the subject matter. I get that. I imagine it's difficult to read. Cleo is trying to get the F chord on her ukulele. Okay.
Yeah, chords and ukuleles are very different from chords and guitars, which is something I had to learn at some point.
I have never played ukulele or guitar, so I don't know. I'm a violinist. I don't do chords. I just do notes. So I don't know much about that.
Yeah,
but
which is much harder.
no.
Which is much harder, I think, because you don't have like the frets where you can just like get hit down at that specific fret and you know it's going to be okay. With violin, you can do you can play wrong in much more interesting ways than with a guitar.
Yeah, it's like, I think it's hard starting out, but like after a while, it just becomes like muscle memory of where to put your fingers.
Mm.
So like it doesn't. It's fine, I think.
Oh yeah. So when you say movie length, Katie, do you mean like 90 minutes or even longer? I mean, I'm obviously not complaining. I certainly have heard about the idea of making videos that are longer than 10 minutes before.
Yeah, Rune, of course. I knew that. I just didn't think of it. Sorry. Oh yeah, Darkland Flame. You mentioned that a dystopian YA sci-fi with cities on wheels trying to eat other cities. I think I've heard of that, but I just didn't recognize the name. But I have heard of it, I think. So, okay.
I like cities on wheels.
Yeah. Traveling cities is just fun. I have discovered that I really like a trope where you're like really quickly going from like one like environment, ecosystem, place type to like another one really quickly. So whether that is like jumping dimensions or just teleporting really quickly, or like in Cytonic you're like have these different fragments of different planets that were like going from one to the next. And I imagine these cities on wheels could be that too. Like I really enjoy that. I don't know why, but I think it's really fun.
Mm-hmm. So in the same way as the Otherland by Ted Williams, where you go like where the characters go down this river, and like every couple of kilometers there's like a new virtual world depending on, and the river just connects those.
Yeah, like I really like that. Or like I haven't read. I've heard that the Sunland Ascends, like that series, they have like this tower with different floors. They're also really different from one another. Like stuff like that. I just think is.
Oh yeah. I've heard about that
really
one.
Oh, it was made into a movie. I think that is where I've heard of that concept. But the movie was bad, according to almost everyone. Oh no. Hopefully the books are better then. Well, we were sprinting. I had a random thought, and I don't know where it came from, but I just suddenly really craved rereading Shadow and Bone by Lee Ward-do, and I have no idea where the thought came from. And now I really want to do that. So maybe like not today because I don't have the books here. I would have to go to the library to get them first. But like maybe I'll just abandon all my reading plans for the month and just reread that trilogy.
I mean, sure, why not? You're on semester break. You should do something that is fun.
Exactly. So yeah.
I have not read a single Leigh Bardugo book, so I have no idea what her style is. I know that Kitty told me that I'll probably not like it, so
It's
that's
like
all I know about it.
her books feel very way like they're more mature in like the content, but the style, like writing style and just way of telling her story and the structure feels very
Okay.
YA.
I have
So
always thought it was out YA, but maybe I just,
it's like one of those books that is marketed as YA, but if you like look at the content, you're like, is it really though?
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
maybe.
I mean, not there's like a lot of sex stuff in it, but just more mature things that you often find more in adult books. I guess
Yeah.
the Shadow and Bone trilogy is like that one is kind of true YA, but like once you move like Six of Crows or something like that, that gets more
Okay.
mature.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's like another thing that I found fascinating. Like how many, like stuff that when we read like excerpts and stuff as YA at school, mostly at school, we were forced to read like a bunch of these books that are all about kids taking drugs and how bad that is. But it's like, well, yeah, you're telling me that it's bad to take drugs, but you're still giving me like a narrative for 14-year-olds about taking heroin and dying of it. It's like, you think that's like the right way to go about this?
I mean, they die, so maybe like this is what happens if you do it. Maybe it was one of those.
Yeah, I mean, the same way that like fairy tales used to be very bloody at the end. It's like, yeah, if you want to ram a message home, you've got to be like very clear about it.
Driftwood by Mary Brennan has a bunch of multiple world fragments all smashed together into one landscape. That I'm gonna add that to my TBR. Oh no, because no. Yes, all Bardugo's books are YA except the Ninth House, like that series, and the recent one, The Familiar. But I feel like like Sarah J. Maas, like the ACOTAR books are technically also YA, but like you know.
I haven't read those, but what about the dragon thing that you're reading that you read, and I keep forgetting the name right now. Fourth Wing, is that YA or not?
It is officially not YA. It is.
But you have
Well,
Magic School and Competition at Magic School, which is like very much YA, isn't it?
but it's like more like college. They call it college. They're like
Okay.
19-year-olds. So they call it new adult. It's like an age category that like exists one day and then doesn't exist the next day, and then the next day it exists again.
You mean the kind of book, the category that is made for people that feel they are too old to read YA but still want to read the same kind of story?
I feel like I would call it YA books for adults. So the writing style and like the story structure and the way of telling the story feels very YA, but we have more mature characters. We have more adult themes to it. Stuff like that. So that's where I would put new adult, and I really like that it exists because those are the books that used to be pushed into YA, which sort of inflated YA, where it was really catering to like the older teens of like 16 to 18, where like a 13-year-old is technically also in the YA range, and they wouldn't really find books for them anymore, or they would have to go to middle
Yeah.
grade, which then also got inflated. So like the 9-year-olds wouldn't find books for them anymore. So I really like that this new adult category exists, that like YA can be really like
Yeah.
also to those younger teens. And then like once you're like ready to move into adult, you have this like in between category that before that would also
Yeah.
go into. So I really like that it exists.
That's really interesting because, like, because I'm an ancient antediluvian character, when I started reading, when I was in the technically YA category, YA wasn't really a thing, right? You had like children's books, and then you're technically YA stuff, but like not so much in fantasy. And like I don't know, when I was 14, I started reading Conan the Barbarian, which is decidedly not YA. Because that whole like marketing thing wasn't yet, like fantasy hadn't reached like YA. I think that's the Harry Potter, Twilight, and then Hunger Games was sort of like when genre fiction became really popular as a YA category, I think. And I was just slightly too early for that, and then had to read about weird dudes with sexual hang-ups disemboweling hundreds of people in a slightly racist way.
Yeah. And like those things are fine to read, but like they aren't written with teenagers in mind.
Yeah, they don't address like things that teenagers think about.
Yeah, so like it's they can read it. That's not what we're saying, like you can't read an adult book if
Yeah.
you're a teenager, but like the things that are like part of your everyday world are not going to be in those books, are not going to be as much in those adult books. Which is why I
Yeah.
think like a YA category is
It's helpful.
a valid thing to have.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I think like there's so many love triangles in YA books, is because if you're a teenager at school, high school, or whatever, there will be a lot of situations where 2 or 3 people are sort of have crushes on the same kind of person and need to negotiate that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I find them boring at this point, but I get why they are something that a lot of like young adults or adolescents are sort of like feel seen when they come across that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Also, like, yes, what Yedwin says, like, Alex Stern is called either Dark Academia or Noodle. This is a pet peeve of mine. Just because you have a school setting doesn't mean you're Dark Academia. Like, Dark Academia also requires certain themes to be addressed, like, in my opinion. In order to make it that just a school setting, I don't think is enough. I haven't read the Alex Stern book, so I don't know if they have those themes. But I see it a lot where like The Will of the Many is called Dark Academia. Like that's not Dark Academia, that's a fantasy book set like with a school setting. That's something. That's not the same thing.
I feel like the problem with Dark Academia is that it started out as like an Instagram kind of aesthetic, and aesthetics are big on style and very thin on thematic exploration. And then they kind of grabbed onto like 1 or 2 books, which mostly like The Secret History by Donna Tartt and 1 or 2 others, and go like, well, these are clearly books in which the people that dress up or do the Dark Academia aesthetic on Instagram would also behave like this in this book. And that's sort of like how Dark Academia as a genre, as a literary genre or subgenre, whatever you want to call it, feels weird, because it kind of became a genre like the other way around, right?
Yeah. The themes that I'm talking about usually is like you have to. I mean, genre is a social construct anyway, so like there's no clear definitions. Like what I consider a certain genre might not everyone be, so it's a bit subjective and lines can be blurry. But in my opinion, in order to qualify as a Dark Academia book, you have to comment on dark academia and parts of academia that aren't ideal. They're not the way they're supposed to be. If you think of like The Secret History, you have these people who get so wrapped up in this thing that they're studying, they do morally reprehensible things.
There's a lot of like self-exploitation is part of it, I think, and a lot of like class themes are really strong in there, right?
Yeah, and then like this classism in academia, this
Yeah.
inequality in academia that can be a thing. I feel like that is more what makes a book dark academia rather than just a school setting. But again, this all is subjective. Like the lines are blurry. Where I draw a line, other people may not. We're just trying to draw boxes around things. But qualification, those things are never perfect, of course.
Yeah.
So
Everyone has to be an overworked borderline alcoholic, otherwise it's not dark academia. Technically, that's just academia, though.
Everyone read ACOTAR, but it's not for him. I can see that. I can see that it's not for a lot of people. I enjoyed it, and I actually watched a video earlier today, like was sort of a review on ACOTAR, and they said like, look, whether you like it or not, you have to give it to Sarah J. Maas that she can write a book where everyone has a strong opinion about it. Like no one is like, this thing exists. Like you either love it or you hate it. There's or at least very few people who fall in between, which is like a skill to write that too, I guess. So
Yeah. I find it always interesting when you have these like breakout sort of like hits of books that like very much define like almost an entire generation. You know, the same way like Twilight did, or these kind of hits. And ACOTAR definitely is that kind of book. And I'm like, why did this book at this specific time? Because you can always go back and find other books that do the same kind of thing. Where it's like, what element of the zeitgeist did Sarah J. Maas hit there that suddenly made this blow up? And, you know, probably marketing played a role and all these other things. Like, clearly, there was something in the collective psyche of 16 to 24-year-olds that she really picked up upon. It's like, what is that aspect of our society that made this suddenly the book that everyone wanted to read or felt seen by?
no, that's interesting. I think part of it is because it's very accessible. Like a lot of people who read Sarah J. Maas, you have fantasy readers who read her, but it's also a lot of people who don't read a ton of fantasy because it is that very accessible gateway. Like the world building, I like her world building, but it's like not very intricate and like, so it's like enough for you to understand what's going on and to sort of paint a general picture of what this world looks like, but it doesn't really go further than that, which is weird because I really like world building. But I think that is something that, a lot of people who don't necessarily read a ton of fantasy and who get really intimidated with intricate world building, that they appreciate of like, oh, the writing is really simple, the world building is really accessible, the like the plot is sort of like she grabs like 2 or 3 different fairy tales or mythology stories and like smashes them together and it kind of works somehow. So like you have sort of like these familiar things going on, and so I think it's just a very easy read. And her character work is really good. I'll say that. You can say about Sarah J. Maas what you want, but her character work is really good.
Okay. Yeah, maybe
So
that's part of it. Then also, like, I guess having sort of like very clear sort of conflict lines in built up makes it very accessible and probably closer to like movie or TV storytelling in a lot of ways, which I think always helps people that are not necessarily prolific readers to start with, to sort of find their feet within a book.
and I think like her story like it very gradually more and more complex. Like if you go, I'm reading a Throne of Glass series, and if you go to like the later books in that, they become pretty epic in scale. Like I would say
Mhm.
that like the latter half of the Throne of Glass series would count as epic fantasy, but like because it's such a gradual build up from like a pretty small scale story to like this massive epic thing that
Mhm.
you barely notice it, and so it sort of really like pulls you in and like always pulls you like a little further along.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, that's I guess something that made, for example, like Mistborn and Sanderson blow up with Mistborn, because Mistborn does a very similar thing. It starts out like very small, and you have this gang of people planning their heist, which is a storytelling format that almost everyone knows, because we've all at the time we had all seen Ocean's 11 or whatever. Everyone knows like the practical heist story. It pulls you in with like a small group of characters, and then at the end it suddenly is like this huge ass thing, but it takes a while to get there.
Yeah. New adult books from publishers who want to continue selling books to people who feel like they've aged at YA. Um, I partially agree with this. Like, of course, like all these categories are just marketing tools. Genres are marketing tools. Age categories are marketing tools. Um, so yes, but also I think that having this category is pretty valid, because I already mentioned like how YA got older, but also adult, like these books would go to adult, and then like adult readers, this was not what they were looking for, and so they wouldn't really find their audience. And also you had like all these adult books that were like about 20-year-olds doing stuff where for a while really hard to find, and still today like it's getting a little better, but it's hard to find like a 40-year-old getting into shenanigans, because these books are no
Mm.
longer YA, were then for a while just being adult, and so they were like taking up space there. Um, so yeah.
Mm. I think with like the marketing category thing, I think is important. And one thing we often forget, I feel like, me definitely, not sure about you, but like a lot of people that hang out in the larger like booktube, maybe even book talk or whatever, like the larger like bookfluencer sphere, we're already like the top, like I don't know, 2 or 3% of engagement when it comes to readers. Like a lot of people go like, I'll just buy a book for a friend, for myself, or whatever, and they don't spend like hours every day watching videos and whatnot. So we are much more informed. So for us, these categories are less important, I guess, than say for someone who just wants to buy a book for like their niece or nephew because it's their birthday coming up and they figure like a book is a good idea. So I think we often underestimate the usefulness of categories because we're already over informed, I guess.
Yeah, like a genre is more like, oh, you liked this other book that is categorized
Yeah.
as sci-fi. Maybe you like this book that has also pretty similar things, and so we put it in the same box. Um,
Yeah.
so I think that is also a really important thing to take into consideration, which is also
Yeah.
why I think trope marketing. I'm not gonna say I like it, but I understand it from like that perspective. Like you liked
Mhm.
this book, oh, this other book has similar elements to it, so you may like this too, type of deal.
Yeah. What I always find interesting is that a lot of people that defend trope marketing and want a lot of trope marketing are also sometimes very, very vocal when it comes to spoilers. And it's like, so how does this book is an enemies to lovers story? How is that not a spoiler at the same time?
I I think that just generally people are not really sensitive to spoilers when it comes to romantic plots, whether it's just like a romance book or romantic subplot. Maybe like if it's a love triangle, like they don't want to know who the main character ends up with. But like other than that, I feel like that is not something that people are genuinely or generally upset with spoilers for. Because I think that, especially if like it's true romance, a lot of people I know who read romance do it because they know it's going to have a happy ending. Because they know that things are going to be all right in the end. And so, like, if their life is already, like, fairly stressful and insecure, like, that sort of thing that they can, like, be sure about is something that is very healing. But they may also be fantasy readers, and when they're in a mood to read fantasy, that is not the moment where their life is too stressful to really handle that insecurity, and so they don't want spoilers for fantasy. But I think that's
that
two
makes sense.
different things.
That makes sense, and I think it's one of those things we often underestimate is like how often books or media can just be that comfort for people that have like a very stressful life, which is why cozy fantasy has become such a thing. I think there's a lot of people out there that have like a bad time, and you get that especially when you come to like the usual communities that are very often online, like queer communities, neurodivergent communities, people that have a rougher time every day just by engaging with all the the viciousness and just the sheer stress of having to interact with the world. For those kind of people, having the comfort of knowing that the media you will consume is basically a safe place, I think is an important aspect that kind of gets forgotten often.
That's why I love Virgin River as a series. Not the 5th book. I read that last month, and oof, that one.
I've heard about it.
But but I really like that series because we have this small town where just everyone is so supportive of one another, and we have people arriving there who have a lot of baggage and are dealing with stuff, and they're finding this community that supports them with that, and it helps them through that. And most of the conflicts come from outside the town, or like the little small things of like, I don't know, again, like teenagers like having their first romance, stuff like that, and like kind of stumbling through it because they don't know what the hell they're doing, stuff like that. Or if it's like really bigger stuff, like
people keep stumbling through those kind of things. That stuff never changes.
Yeah, but then there's like older characters like giving them advice and stuff, and it's just this really nice community that I think would be immensely suffocating if you actually lived there. But like for like a 300-page book, every once in a while, it makes me so happy, and I'm like, it's a bit like it's like a hug. I feel like reading the book is like getting a hug, and that's why I read them.
And I think that's like one of those things where I feel reading has changed, or our media use has changed. It's become far, like, I guess, more instrumental, or we are more aware of like how we instrumentalize media in the way that not usually, like I feel like years and years and years ago, right, decades ago, it was like we consume media for entertainment. Before that, and entertainment was just this huge blob of like whatever, and this has like I feel like diversified in a lot of ways. Where sometimes we're like, yeah, well, I'm reading this book because I want to do this and this and this, or I'm consuming this bit of media because I'm all stressed out and I want like a round of like a book that is like a warm bath for the soul. That's what I want right now. So I'm choosing this. So we have become, I feel like, more specific in our media use in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's also why I read so widely, because sometimes I have different needs from books. And so like I pick up different things for different reasons.
Which makes a lot of sense.
bookstore that puts A Song of Ice and Fire as a children book series, age plus. That is an interesting choice. Like I've also noticed in bookstores here that like fantasy books are often like put in YA because they like adults who read fantasy. Like that's for children, I guess. I guess that is the mindset. I don't know. I find it weird.
Well, I mean, the first chapter, right? The first chapter of Game of Thrones is a Bran viewpoint, and Bran is like 8 or 9 at that point. So I guess if someone just like opens the thing, reads the first chapter, and goes, "Oh, it's about like an 8-year-old boy riding his pony," I guess this is for kids. Because we expect 8-year-olds to read like 1,000-page books. That's just like what happens.
Yeah, Throne of Glass is rough. You can tell like once you read Crown of Midnight, which is the second book, like you can like just notice that the writing is so much better and that she had so much more experience when she wrote the second book, or like just a lot more editing, I guess, because she wrote that first book. She just like when she was 16, and she just put it out on the internet, and like that was how the first book came to be, and then it was published, and then she wrote the second book with more like more editing and the support that like actually like publishing through people who know what they're doing gives you. So you notice that things get increasingly better as you continue with the series. But yeah, but Throne of Glass is rough.
But that's like the thing, Cleo, right? It's like if the US version was in YA and the UK one was in adult, if they have different publishers and the publisher sends like categorizes it differently, then the poor bugger at the bookstore who has to sort that stuff will just like follow the lead of like, publisher says this is this, and you got to trust the publisher in that situation, right? But it's still funny. Don't get me wrong, it's still funny.
I was looking for Jade War in the Fnac, and I went to like the adult fantasy section, and they had like book 1 and book 3, but not book 2. So I went to the YA section. It was like exactly the same edition. In the YA section, I never did that book 2, so I got it from there. But like, it's the exact same series. Like either it's adult or it's YA. Like not even US UK type of deal. It was so weird. But I think as I said, there is just this association that fantasy is for younger people because adults read like serious books, I guess. I don't know. So I think that is the reason why a lot of these things get put into YA sections in like bookstores and libraries, even if they're not. So
yeah. What I found like interesting with that, that labeling and stuff, when you buy books online, obviously they use like a tag system, so it's like YA and something else and something else and something else, because you can make these more specific. And I recently looked at one book that had both the dystopian and the utopian label at the same time.
Same thing, though. Like every utopia is kind of a dystopia. I mean.
Yeah, definitely, but it was just like interesting. It's like it was climate fiction, dystopia, utopia, and another one when I'm like, okay, hopeful, and I'm like,
my
you gotta
library,
make up your mind about this one.
My library has utopian/dystopian fiction as like one tag. Like they don't even separate that out. It's just like one thing that's like utopian/dystopian, which I think is funny.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense that utopia and dystopia are similar in a lot of ways, and I think it was like what's his name, Frederick Jameson, who wrote in the Desire Called Utopia. I think the title is a book of like a collection of essays, and he was like, utopian novels are the mode of utopian novel is irony. The idea of a utopia is not to go like, this is the world we want. This is like, by describing this wonderful world, everyone should sit back and look at the world that they're living in and find out that it's shit, basically. Especially stuff like Thomas More or Morris or whatever you want to call him, is like, this is basically a very biting satire of England at the time, but because you can't write that, he wrote it in the form of a utopian novel. It's not that
Well,
the society of utopia is the goal, right? Mm-hmm.
Actually, Utopia is 2 parts. And part
Yeah.
1 is just a conversation between a bunch of people saying this is what's wrong with England right now. And it's like,
That's true.
yeah, but can we do it better though? It's like, yes, we can. Look at this other society. And then we start part 2, which is like the description of utopia that people think about. But like half of that book is just like literal people saying this is what sucks about England.
Yeah. Thomas More, I guess, had some reasons to be unhappy with his country. That's true. But that's why Jameson chooses like utopia as his first example. He goes like, this is the basis, and then everyone calls their books utopia by describing these other places, and he moves on to Bacon, Nova Atlantis, and other books to explain that yes, you have to read a utopian novel or a classic utopia as a criticism of the actual world.
Funny story about Utopia. Thomas More actually wanted to call it Nusquama. Nusquam means nowhere in Latin. So it's like nowhere land. But then his friend, Erasmus, was like, I think we could do that clever. And he made it Utopia, which could come from utopia, which is like means not, and then
or utopia when it's with the oi,
so like
means
not place, so non-existing place, or utopia, and then it's good place. So like
those fucking humanists and their attempts of cramping it as many like in Latin or Greek wordplays as possible.
All the names of like people and places in that book is like them trying to be really funny with like Latin or Greek's names. Like I'm like seriously, like they have a river that is called the Anidros, which like so like negative, and then Water, so like the river without, I guess the river is called without water, and I'm like, you really think you're funny there? Like you could just see like them thinking they were so funny there, and I'm like, okay then.
Look, there were a bunch of people that were very unhappy with the situation they lived in. They had to find their jokes where they could find them, get them where they could find them.
I guess. And yes, Cleo, like the YA basement is part of what I'm thinking about when I think like just any book that has like the slightest hint of fantasy just goes there. Also, like true children's books.
Well, at least we call it the basement and not the dungeon.
I guess. I would like the dungeon though. That would be funny. There is a library near where I live. I don't like, the library is part of a system of like a couple of different libraries where like your library card works in each of them. But I don't go there very often because it's a bit further away. But like they have 2 sections. They have children's books and they have YA/adult books, and within those, like everything is like mixed together. So like you have like a picture book, like learn how to read type thing, like right next to like a book for like 11-year-olds and stuff, and I'm like, I love this mess.
But that's like the thing, right? Sometimes it is good to have that connection. This is like, I think Terry Pratchett said it, like when someone asked him what's the perfect book for a 6-year-old, and he's like, the perfect book for a 6-year-old is a book that was written for an 8-year-old, because you got to stretch your mind by checking out that kind of stuff that is slightly above your current pay grade, basically.
Yeah, I had a few. I also did that, like reading books like slightly above it, and there's a few books that I read and I was like, okay, this is fine. And I reread it later on and was like, okay, actually, this is really good. But I just like was a bit too young for it at the time. The one that I
Yeah.
think of right away is my favorite book of all time, still today, is To Be Alone by Timothée de Fombelle, which I read. I think I read it when I was like 11 or something, and I thought it was okay. And I reread it when I was 15 or 16. Like, I think it's definitely like not targeted at like 15, 16-year-olds. Like it's more like 13-year-olds, I'd say. But like when I was 11, I was like, didn't fully understand things, which were quite obvious. Like as an adult, it's like super obvious what the book is about, but 11-year-old me, I guess, didn't really see it.
Yeah.
And so
And
I
I
was
think
like,
that's like one of the good things, right? That
yeah.
as kids, a lot of stuff just goes over your head. You don't recognize all the terrible stuff. It's more like when you read it back, it's like, holy shit, I read that as a kid.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I was also, I think, if you're certain emotional stuff just doesn't hit as a child, even like if you understand what's going on, you may not
Yeah.
have had a certain experience that like fully makes you like
Yeah.
realize the full, like, like the what
Yeah.
it's actually saying, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Anyway,
You wanted to go for like a third sprint? I just looked at the at the time. I'm like, holy shit.
I am actually getting a little tired, so I was gonna end this stream
Okay.
here and get ready to go to bed.
That's a smart idea. I'm gonna finish my tea and then I'll just and finish my that part of the essay collection, so I can start with the essays on Name of the Rose tomorrow.
Okay, so thank you everyone for joining. We didn't do as much reading as I had initially thought we would do, but I hope you enjoyed it. And I will see you again at some point, I guess. So, bye, people in the chat. Bye.
Yeah, goodbye.
So, yeah.